And welcome back. For those of you that do not know, I became a grandpa. But do not call me grandpa, because I can still probably break your arms. And I'm going to be known as Saba. My granddaughter's name is Nalini Ahuva. And she's named after this wonderful woman named my wife. And I decided in honor of her naming and in honor of her, my granddaughter, I'm going to give a class on what ahuva and ahava is. The truth is that I have been going through a very beautiful piece by Rav Dessler, Rav Eliyahu Dessler, who was a very prolific writer and thinker, and I would say probably one of the most important thinkers of the last 100 years when it comes to outreach, when it comes to topics of interest for young thinking people. He has a unique way of breaking down ideas and challenging the way we think about ideas. And I don't know anyone that is so current and has so much depth in his thinking. So everything that you're going to hear from me for these next two or three sessions, depending on how far we go today, is really an expression of the ideas that I have seen from him and my own unique twist at kind of sharing them. So if there are any flaws in my presentation, it is an expression of my inadequacies and my old age now. So I bechila, please forgive me. Okay. So many years ago when I was a campus rabbi, I actually could do really cool things, like go onto campus with this thing called a camcorder. And we would ask students on campus, all kinds of questions, interview them, and then get responses. And I'd use that as a trigger video for a conversation. And I can't find that video. I don't know where it is, but I would have loved to have shown it to you. And it would have looked something like this. It would have been me without any gray in my beard, 23 years ago. Okay, when I first started my job as a campus rabbi. And you would see me walking up to different people on the quad at Brooklyn College, asking them this particular question. The question is, are you in a relationship? If you are, how do you know that you're in love? That was the question I would ask all these people. And it would be very interesting people, very colorful people, okay? And maybe just people of color. And because that's what the campus was like back then. And, so I got the best answers, some of my most famous, best responses. And they all, I'm going to boil down every response into one response for you. It was all the same, okay? It was, I know that my girlfriend loves me because she does this for me. Right? I know that my boyfriend loves me because, this is a real quote, because he takes me to clubs every Saturday night. I know that my girlfriend loves me because she picks me up in the morning and drives me to college, right? These are all original quotes, right? It was all about how someone does something for you. And then you think about it for yourselves. And I'm not going to interview you because I don't want to embarrass anybody. But how do you know that the people in your life, the close people to you in your life, actually love you? Think about it. Well, ask the question, what responses do you get? Well, how are you measuring the fact that, you're receiving love from someone else? What is that attributed to? How do you relate to that love? Because often the way in which you relate to something is the way in which you want to receive it. This is something I learned from the 5 languages of the 5 love languages, right? The 5 love languages are very simple, okay? They tell you that a person needs to receive love in a very particular kind of way, and if they don't receive love in that way, they feel unloved. Okay, you know what they are? They're acts of service. There's words of affirmation. There's gifts. There's quality time and touch. Right? Thank you. Those are the 5. And so often in a relationship, when someone is complaining about one of those 5 things, they're not getting words of affirmation, they're not getting quality time. That's their unique love language, and that's what they need. They're complaining about the things they want, and vice versa. Whatever you're complaining about is often an expression of your love language, and so on and so forth. But it's interesting that God created human beings with these 2 very important faculties. Okay, and I'm going to argue, and this is not my argument. Rabbi Dessler is going to argue. And I really believe that at its core, this is what Judaism tells us what love is. I'm just going to spoiler alert, love is to give, whatever that means. We'll try to see how we get there, okay? So when God created the universe, he created us with this ability of taking and giving. Polar opposite, 2 different forces. People that are interested in giving to others, the people that are willing to receive from others, okay? And even that word receive is different because there is this expression of taking. Pasuk in Iyov, look at number 1, says that what? Im tzidkat mati ten lo. If you are righteous, what do you give him? Meaning, if you believe that there is a God in the sky and he's infinite, there's nothing in the world that you can do for him. When you get up in the morning and you say, Moda'ani lefanecha, you're not saying that because God told me to and I want God to, you're not saying, Baruch atah Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam, blessed are you the Lord, because you're the King of Kings. You don't say that because God needs you to hear him. He doesn't need to hear you say that he's awesome, that he's a king. You need to be reminded of the fact that there is this creator. You need to be reminded of the fact. You need to have gratitude. The Moda'ani needs for you to feel gratitude. All the blessings are there, not because God needs to hear it from you, obviously. It's there for you to impress upon yourself that there's something bigger there, because we often forget. We like to live in a world where we're always thinking about our wants and our own needs, and therefore all those blessings that are there are really to remind us. But at the core, if you do believe there's a God, he's infinite, an infinite being requires absolutely nothing. You can't do anything for him. The greatest good that God has is your ability to connect to him. Okay? That's the only thing that you can go ahead and receive from him, but he can receive nothing from you. Are you asking a question? No? Someone asking a question there? Okay, I can't, there's a camera here in front of me, and I see this or this. I just think someone's asking a question. Okay, fine. Anyone who has any question at any point, please feel free to ask. Okay. We also know that God created man, look at number 2, in his image. God creates us in his image, which means if God is this infinite giver, has this infinite desire to give unconditionally, altruistically, that means we were created in that image, and you and I have to be asking ourselves, if God was created, if God is the ultimate giver and he wants nothing in return, maybe there's something unique about being godly in that way. How many of us give altruistically? How many of us give because we want something in return? I know for a fact that there are plenty of people in this in New York that give lots of donations to lots of different politicians, not because they want to give charity, but because they want something out of the politicians. Now, is that giving or is that taking? Which one is it? Well, it depends, Rabbi. Right, so you have different kinds of people taking. Now, we also know that taking is, I would argue that taking is the root of all evil. Look at Hamas. Okay? Hamas is fueled, what happened in Gaza is fueled by people who are really taking. Right? It's obvious that the leaders of Hamas are these multi-billionaires living in Qatar, okay, who have everything to gain from fueling a conflict because they're able to go ahead and collect money. They're good. They've set themselves up for so long. Taking is the root of all evil. It's what we call, it's the root of all selfishness. It is the root of all desires that end up, that are expressed through egotism. It is the source of all that is bad. As a matter of fact, if you think about it, you have today you have all these illegal migrants in New York. Who knows why they came? Okay, but unfortunately, so many of them are right now resorting to to violence, resorting to stealing. Okay, and there's different levels of stealing. Stealing is all about taking. You have something, I want it, I'm going to take it. And so you have the kind of guy that's like the burglar who walks into a Gucci store and just takes or the guy with the iPhone. I'm not sure if you saw the iPhone video. Yeah, the guy who walks into the iPhone store and just like starts taking ripping iPhones out of the store. And some guy's recording the guy working. He's like, you're just not going to stop him. You're not going to do anything. He's like, right? You have that guy who's going in. Then you have another guy who's got like 2 stores on Broadway, and he's trying to sell you a camera. And in one store he's got one price, and another store he's got another price, and you're going back and forth, and he's sketching you because he owns both stores, right? Right? So you have that kind of guy. He's also taking from you, but very differently. And there's all kinds of things in business that happen, taking and so on and so forth, right? But you have a government that is ultimately set up, and that government is righteous, and hopefully there's some kind of justice. And this is exactly what the Mishnah says. Mishnah says, ben Sagan HaKahonim Omer, Havi mitpalel b'shlomei shel malchut. You have a responsibility to pray for the welfare of your government. Shilmaleh mora ish d're'ehu chaim balahu. Because if there is no fear that government inspires, a man will he'll eat everyone else alive. You think that you're safe because there are laws in this country? There are no laws in this country right now. And by the way, even if there were laws, do you know the rule of threes? right? You're always 3 meals away from all of society completely losing its morality. Oh, people are moral. And that's not true. People's morality are upheld because of laws that the government sets up. Oh, there are laws. Well, yeah, because if you run a red light, eventually you're going to get arrested. If you're drinking while you're driving, you're going to go to jail. There's laws set up. But if there's no food, if the infrastructure that supports life is gone, there's no morality anymore. It's survival of the fittest. Each man for his own, right? And therefore, it's in our best interest to have a government that is actually operating and functioning properly. However much government you want, you figure that out for yourselves. But the bottom line is there has to be a system in place to ensure that man's base nature doesn't take over and destroy the world that you and I live in. Because that's how far taking goes. I will take everything. There's actually I don't know if it's true today. I know there was a tribe in Africa where possession did not exist. And that the possession, even like a wife, was claimed, and that status was maintained by strength. And therefore, if I was bigger and stronger than you, I could walk into your house and throw you out of your house if you couldn't defend yourself. And that's how possession existed. It existed by survival of the fittest. And why can't society operate that way? What's wrong with that? What's wrong with someone being stronger and being able to take from you? Who says that there has to be these boundaries and borders? Who says that the operating system that you're operating with right now is the right one? Who determines that? Well, if it's all arbitrary, it doesn't matter. But we believe in laws, and we believe in possession, and we believe that people have responsibility of caring for the other. But we also know, look at number 4, right? This is King Solomon at his one of my favorite quotes. I used to live by this all the time. It says, "Soneh matnot yichyeh," he who hates gifts will live. Why is that true? First of all, how many people here hate gifts? You hate gifts? You're a liar. What? You don't like getting gifts? Do you like giving gifts? What? Okay. Okay, fine. I'll take your word for it. I think if I give you a nice Rolex right now, you'd be happy. Or a Patek Philippe, I think you'd be very happy, right? What about winning prizes? Do you like that? Okay, fine. It's a little different. Okay, but like at the core, everyone here loves receiving things. I would love a nice Porsche. I've been wanting a Porsche for so long, right? And actually, I got a phone call today. Someone said, "Rabbi, I have a crazy lease for you." But I can't drive a red Porsche. It's too much. Anyways, it's a cherry metallic colored. I'm like, I can't drive. Anyway, so I'll show you the pictures if you want it. Anyone who is looking for a 1-year lease on a Porsche, I have a great deal for you. Okay. Anyway, so you have this idea that King Solomon says that one who hates gifts lives, right? Well, I would love to receive gifts, but what happens to a human being that is consistently receiving gifts? This is why, by the way, God gives you free will. This is why, by the way, God gives you challenge. This is why God creates a world where you have needs that are not met. Because when you go out and you fend for yourself, and you fight, and you overcome, and you build, right, what happens? You become stronger as a person. If I gave you this black Amex card that has an unlimited budget, you could do whatever you want with it, buy whatever you want, anytime. And you don't have to worry about paying the bill at the end of the month, I'll take care of it. Am I helping you or am I harming you? In the beginning, you could argue, "Oh, it's great, Rabbi, thank you so much," just for a few months. For a few months, I guarantee you'd be addicted to this thing. You would never stop using it. I would destroy you if I gave this to you. By the way, I don't even know what this is. This is a WeWork card. Okay. It was just an accident. I don't even know why it was in my pocket. But I thought it was a credit card. But you have this idea that, well, of course I want to receive. Everyone here wants the gift. But how many of us are willing to create boundaries of what we receive? And what do those boundaries look like? How do we create those boundaries for ourselves? I was born into a world where I was trained that taking is always good. And the more you take, the better it is. Of course, you got to do it politely. You don't steal. You got to be smart about taking the things that you want. You got to say the right words. You got to smile. You got to nod. You got to be polite. You got to play the game to win. But who says that playing the game to win is exactly what I should be doing? Look at number 5. This is Chovot HaLevavot. He says, in every act, in every word, in every thought, except perhaps those directed toward his innermost self, without any connection with anything outside of oneself, is always devoted either to loving kindness and giving or to grasping and taking. That means everything that you and I do at the core is motivated by me wanting to give or take. He says, in the matters of inner life, there are no indifferent actions. There are only obligations or prohibitions. We're going to do something. We're either going to want to do it, not do it. That's the world that you and I live in. So what about businesses? Okay, Rabbi, I hear what you're saying. Okay, they're giving and taking, a good thing. What about businesses? Businesses function with this whole notion of there being barter, of giving and taking. Are you saying that people should not have businesses? Because the whole purpose of business is really to what? What are you doing in business? You're providing a service for your client. Do you think Apple is really there to make the world a better place? What was their slogan? To make a ding in the universe? Something like that? Right? Do you think that's what they're there for? Apple is there for one reason and one reason alone. They're there to make money, 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 money. That's it. That's what they're there for. They want to make money. And they're going to figure out they have the smartest way of making money. If you look at every single Apple computer, there's 3 kinds of computers you could get. The one that you don't want, the one that you'll settle for because you can't afford it, and then there's one that you really want. Right? There's always 3 prices. In every iPhone, there's 3 categories. Right? Why do they do that? Because they're really trying to get you to buy the most expensive one. They don't want you to buy the cheap one. You don't want to feel cheap buying an iPhone. I want the best one. I want the best camera. Why can't they just put everything in one camera and give me what I really want? Because they're trying to create a need, a want, because they want to take your money away. Is that ethical or unethical? There's nothing illegal about it. What's unethical about it? Just I created a smart psychological strategy that manipulates you to want to spend more. And if you can't, you feel bad. Why is that? What's wrong with that? Is that the right thing to do? Is that a better business practice? Did Apple figure out the hack for sales of coming up with the perfect swoosh sound when you open up that box? You pull that, remember when you first got that swoosh sound? They don't do it anymore. But they used to spend time on figuring out this perfect box and the lettering and the stickers, all designed to make it feel like a premium product. We use premium material, right? But their technology is old and outdated, but you need it because you're in their ecosystem to keep you grounded. Is that good business? Is that smart business? Is that the right thing? Is that the wrong thing? We don't even know anymore, by the way. That's the sad part. We think it's normal. That's normal, Rabbi. Is it normal that we should live in a city or in a government that taxes your salary anywhere between 37 and 48%, depending on what tax bracket you're in, and then you go to the store to buy food, they tax you again, and then you want to drive on the highway and they tax you again because you got to pay tolls? Is that normal? Where does a taking from another become the wrong kind of policy? Where does a business practice become an evil, twisted plot that just rip your soul in half and leave you with nothing at the end? Right? I know I'm being dramatic, right? And I know I'm exaggerating, but think about it for a second. Who says that these are normal business practices? So Rav Dessler says like this. He says, you say that only giving is good and that taking is bad. You will disrupt the whole order of the world. All creatures are made by God to both give and take. This is how God arranged the world. So why should we be any different? Why should he not take as well as give? So that's the 2 extremes, Rabbi. Make up your mind. I just said that taking is bad. Soneh matnot yichya is bad. People who hate gifts, those are the real winners. The people that keep taking, those are the evil people. They're bad. But that would disrupt the whole entire system. Everything in the world takes and gives and takes. Why am I trying to disrupt it? Why should I be any different? That's his question. So he says like this, there's 2 kinds of taking. Okay, he continues. There are some who take the maximum and give a minimum. There are the merchants and middlemen who take advantage of every opportunity for profit without ever considering whether the effort of the work they have invested will really bring any relationship with profit gained. When they bend their effort to benefit from their neighbor, failure or take advantage with ignorance, can this really distinguish from the plain, unvarnished deception? I would say that maybe there is some unvarnished deception here with Apple, not to speak of those who mass their fortune by usury, betting on other people for hardworking earnings, or those who exploit their workers, paying them a pittance for hard work and exacting toil, or who oppress whole nations, ruling them with a tyrant's hand, even though some incidental benefits may accrue to their people. All these and there, like the examples of much taking and little giving. And furthermore, even the little that they do give is not true giving. It has its roots not in good, the faculty of giving, but in evil, the faculty of taking. All their desires are through and thoughts are immersed in taking. If they give, it's only with the object of taking and sevenfold in return. The storekeeper, for example, gives his goods in order to take a profit. If he gives the customers best quality goods, his purpose is merely to double his profits, right? You go to Uri's, great stuff, right? But you'll see they're going to raise their prices soon. And it's still greater evil emerges, since that everyone's drive is toward taking. The inevitable result is intensive competition, and each person trying to get as much as he can for himself out of every situation. True, there's nothing wrong with this from the point of view of human judgment, but does not competition lead to much needless pain and suffering, and sometimes even to severe illness and premature death? Such are the results of this type of giving and taking. You hear what he's saying? His point is like, okay, right, I got it. We live in a society, I understand giving and taking. But who says the kind of giving and taking that the world that you and I live in right now is the world that God had intended for us? Who says this is right? Who says this is the right system? Who says that this is how I should be rewarded for my work and time? And that person should be rewarded for his work and time that way? Who says that's the right thing to do? The tzaddik is different. The righteous person is different. That's what this pasuk continues. The kedoshim. I'm going to go through it. We're going to get there. I'm going to get there. I want you to go through this thought process with me. I know it's troubling. I had a hard time with it also. I'm like, well, what are we supposed to do? Like, duh. Like, of course, doesn't matter. Nice idea, Rabbi. Bottom line is, I got to make money, right? I get that, and I want you to make a lot of it, right? But I want you to make a lot of money for different reasons than you and I. I mean, we might be on the same page. We may not be, but you'll see at the end what I mean. Of course, you should have everything. Of course you should have money, right? But why are you making the money? Are you making the money because you want to take? Or are you making the money because you want to give? It's a very big difference.
And really, you want to survive.
Well, I'm not talking about survival today. How many people here need to work to survive? How many people here need to work to survive? You need to work to survive?
Yes, to get by.
No, you don't.
No,
success. I didn't talk about success. I didn't talk about success. Today, I'm not saying you should go on welfare. I'm not suggesting, and I don't want that for you. Okay, but I'm just saying you don't need money. You don't need the jobs that you have. You don't need to work as hard as you're working to survive today. You don't need it. I'm saying like the basic necessity to live today. You don't need. I'm saying you could live at home. I'm not saying you should. I'm not saying you shouldn't be independent. I'm not saying you shouldn't go out and have nice things. I'm just saying, if you really think about it, what do you really need to survive? You don't need to work as hard as you're working right now to survive. By the way, I want you to know, like a tree, this is like completely tangent, but just important for me to express. A tree fell on my house during the snowstorm a couple of days ago, and it took out the power and the cable. So I had this tree, and I called up all these people to like figure out how much it's going to cost me. I can't afford to spend $2,000 to take down a tree. You know what I'm saying? It's just like whatever it is. So I decided I'm going to do it myself. So I have an axe and a saw. And the first day I could actually do this was yesterday on Sunday. So my arms are, I could barely, my hand shakes when I'm holding a cup of tea because my arms are so sore from like holding logs of like wood that I'm going to use for firewood at some point. I don't know. Anyway, I'm not finished. If anyone wants to come and help me on Friday or Sunday, please let me know. I'll teach you how to use an axe and a saw, and I promise you'll get a great workout out of it. All right, anyway, so I know what I'm saying is extreme. I'm just playing devil's advocate for a minute, okay? You don't need what you're doing to survive. Okay, can you work, what's the minimum amount of time you need to work to survive? How many hours a week is it?
40.
Yeah, question.
I just feel like it's flawed because you're not going
Tell me why.
to work the way you work when you're older. So you have to work in order to survive.
Okay, you're assuming that the work that you're making now will be there for you in 10 years from now?
I know that.
You're assuming that if you work harder now, you'll have more money later?
If I don't do it now, it will definitely not be there.
So I live with the following principle. Of course, I save as much money as I can. Of course, hopefully I'm making smart investments. Yes, you should be investing. You should be smart, 100%. I'm not saying you shouldn't be. I'm asking a different question. Don't misunderstand me. Yes, buy yourself real estate, be in the stock market, make smart investments, do deals, handle, do what you got to do to make money. I'm not saying you shouldn't. All I'm asking is the following question. I'm saying, if you had to live with way less than whatever you have right now, forget about the future, just to survive right now. What do you need to do to survive right now? It's such a hard question. It's not that difficult. Forget about everything in the future. I don't even know if you're going to be here next year. You should live until 120. The world's changing so fast. I'm just saying, we're worrying about things that we shouldn't even be worrying about right now. I'm not saying you shouldn't have a plan. I'm asking right now for a moment, what do you need to survive? How many hours a week do you need right now to survive? Yeah.
Each kid is at least $70,000 in tuition and dental.
How many children do you have?
2.
Okay, so I have 6. Okay? And I don't know where you got $70,000 from. In tuition?
Tuition is 40.
Are you in Manhattan?
No.
Okay, well, Brooklyn's tuitions are not $40,000.
I'm telling you the recording.
Okay, then you'll talk to me later. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. It's not 40. My kids went to school in Brooklyn. I never paid $40,000 for school. Okay, well, I don't know. Anyway, Kitzur is that. What's that? You want me to get back on track? Okay, so Jessica's saying I have to get back on track. Anyway, the point that I'm making is that if you can just think about what your personal needs are for survival, okay, then you don't really need much. Okay, yes, again, I'm not saying you shouldn't have a job, but yes, your personal needs are very small. And therefore, when you think about it from the place of a righteous person, you'll see where I'm getting at in a minute. Okay, this is over here. Pasuk says, "L'kadoshim asher ba'aretz hema va'adirei kol chavtzeichem." Right, kol chavtzei bam. Right, the holy ones in the earth, the mighty ones, whom is all my delight. God really loves the tzaddik, right? Because he has a different mindset when it comes to being a giver versus being a taker. 2 examples of this. 1, we see V'talech Chanoch et Elokim. We all know the story of Chanoch. Chanoch was a Noach and the Teva, right? Noah and the flood. Noah's great-grandfather was Chanoch, and he was one of the few people that were taken alive. He never died in our tradition. He was taken. Some people like to use this as alien abduction theory. You could do whatever you want with it. But bottom line is that he is taken away into this higher dimension, and he is taken away to this higher dimension, and he is living on a different plane of existence. Okay, look at number 10 for a moment. Okay, Hanoch was a cobbler. This is Rabbi Salanter, and he says with every single stitch that he made, he achieved mystical unions with the Creator. Okay. Right, he was a cobbler, and therefore his unique ability to reach this high level of righteousness came from the fact that he was a cobbler. The guy who used to make shoes, and he was so special because he would have these deep level of mystical thinking every single time he would put a stitch in the shoe. Right, you got a Chanoch shoe. Okay, it was a brand back then, and it was the best possible shoe you could possibly imagine. And the reason why he reaches this highest level of walking with God is because he was literally walking on air with his shoes. Right, because he was thinking with these high levels of thinking. So listen to what he says. He says, this midrash cannot possibly mean that while he was sitting and stitching shoes for customers, his mind was engaged on mystical pursuits. This would be forbidden by the din, by law. How could he divert his attention to other matters while engaged in the work which he had been hired to do by others? No. The mystical unions which Chanoch achieved were nothing more nor less than the concentration which he lavished on each and every stitch to ensure that it would be good and strong, and that the pair of shoes he was making would be a good pair, giving them maximum pleasure and benefit to whoever would wear them. In this way, Chanoch achieved union with the attribute of his Creator, who lavishes in goodness and the benefit of the others. This was his mystical union. He was united and wholehearted in his desire, his single-minded ambition to attach himself to his Creator's attributes. Of course, as a natural consequence, he was protected from any hint of evil or wrongdoing. There could be no question of his ever deceiving or overreaching his customers, even unwittingly. His taking would never exceed the value of his work he was doing, the measure of his giving. Chanoch was so focused on being like a creator that even when he was making his shoes, his sole intention was, how do I give myself to this person in this complete way? By the way, this is exactly what Paro sees in Yosef, he says he's an Ish Elokim. Who is this person that has a Ruach Elokim, the Spirit of God in him? Because everything Yosef did was 100%. Even when he was in prison, when he was a servant in someone's house, he always asked himself, how can I be the maximum giver? How can I give maximally in the situation? Not how can I take from the scenario? How am I going to sketch the system to avoid the work? I'm going to give 100% of myself because that's what it means to be a righteous person. I want to be 100% in that giving phase. I don't want to be in that taking phase. Well, number 11 tells the story of the Chafetz Chaim, a famous story. He had a little bodega, a little grocery store in Radin, and he was super particular about the fruits he would want. He's like, I'm going to have the best fruit store. I'm going to sell the best fruits. He would go out and go to the farms and pick the best fruit. And people knew that if you wanted good produce, you go to him because he was cheap. And eventually, what was he doing? He was killing the competition. So he felt bad. So he started, opening up with less hours so that people would go to the other stores. To the point where there were lines around the block to wait for his produce. So what did he do? He closed the shop up. He's like, I don't want to play this game. I don't want to play the game. Was he crazy? He's got a good business. He'd open up another one, and open up one in Radin or in Krakow, open up all the little, you have the little Chafetz Chaim stores, you have the brand, right? And he's doing great. Like, why would you stop? Why would you stop? You're taking business away from other people. Who's in control of your parnassah? Are you in control of your parnassah? Or he believes in something more? I don't want to be the guy that's just taking. So what did he do? I don't know if you realize this. The Chafetz Chaim would go around to make money. He would sell his books. So people thought that he hired some salesman to go around and sell his books, like those guys selling encyclopedias coming to your door. Would you like Encyclopedia Britannica? He himself would walk to people into towns and sell his book, right? And people did not know that was the Chafetz Chaim selling his own book. Only the Talmidei Chachamim of the town who knew who he was would give the proper respect. But he was so unassuming, short guy, okay, with a very beautiful face and smile, right? But he understood that life wasn't about grabbing all the material things you possibly could want for yourself. He understood he wanted a simple life. I'm not saying that life's for everybody. I'm not saying we could live that life today either. I'm not saying I can't live it. And he didn't have furniture in his house because he was being a minimalist. I can't do that. Right? And I'm not saying that we should do that. I want to go through the thought exercise. I want you to think more deeply about why you take the things you take. How do we think about the world that you and I live in?
Question.
Yeah, go for it.
So your parnasa comes from Hashem.
Yes.
And the Chafetz Chaim believes that more than
100%. Yeah.
So how did he put it in his control that he should work less, that his competition should be able to make parnasa? Shouldn't the same Hashem give his competition parnasa?
Yeah, he should. And so what's interesting is there's actually a true story that this is in Bnei Brak. There was a guy who he was the first guy to open up his makolet, right? And a block away, many years later, some other guy opens up a makolet. So the family's furious. Who's this guy opening up the makolet, this and that? He's like, so no one says anything. This guy goes to this new store. He says, hey, how are you? Listen, I looked through your store. You're making a mistake. If you're going to put out these products, he starts giving him advice on how to set up the store so he can make more money. So his kids find out about this, like, Dad, what are you doing? What are you doing? You can't give away the secrets. You spent 25 years building your business. He's like, what? He's like, you think that my parnassah comes from these things? He's like, you crazy? This guy is going to work. He's going to sell more, and God's going to give me money from someplace else. He's not worried about it. It's just a different mind. It's a different mindset. I'm not saying you shouldn't work. I'm not saying you shouldn't go out. I'm not saying you shouldn't make money. Do it, but understand that everything that you do at the end of the day, you have to let go and let God. That's all I'm saying. And that's the principle they lived with. You create a space where you open up your hands, you say, Poteach et yadecho, mazbil chol charatzon. Do you believe that, yes or no? We are living in a time of abundance. You are living in a time where we have more than anyone before us. Way more than anyone before us. And we live beyond our means. That's why I say, go through the exercise and ask yourselves, what could you live without? What can you lessen? I was at a Pesach program last year, and some guy was complaining that his wife spent $200,000 on the outfits that she was going to wear the week we were away from Pesach. He's like, I'll show you the credit card bill, Rabbi. I'm like, I don't want to see it. I feel bad for you. No, the bathing suit, he said, was like $25,000. And it was a bikini. I'm like, what is she? I'm like, are you crazy? Take that card away from her. You're hurting her. Killing her. You're killing yourself. Right? Where do we draw the line for what we go out, we work? Where do we say this is enough? Because all we want is to take. We want to take. And there's a balance between what you go out and take for yourself, right, versus what you give. How many people here think about how much charity they're obligated to give every single day? How many of you have a special bank account where you automatically remove some of your money and put it straight into charity? You're giving masrot. How many of you are thinking strategically about where you could use that money in a very meaningful way? How much time do you spend researching products online before you buy them? How many of you are thinking about or researching the charities that actually need help and are thinking more deeply about where you could give that money, where you could donate your time, right? And give money back or give your time back to organizations that need volunteers, right? How many of you are thinking like that? That's what this conversation is about. Because ultimately, we're going to say that there are two kinds of people. There's givers and there's takers, right? There's lovers, and there are people that are selfishly only thinking about what they could take from the world around them. So the Gemara says, the Gemara says like this. The Gemara in Talmud Brachot says, the greater is he who benefits from the labor of his own hands than he who fears God. Why is that true? What does that mean? What does it mean that he who benefits from his labor of his own hands is greater than one who fears God? Why is that true? How is he benefiting from the labor of his own work, the work of his own hands? Where is the great virtue here? Anyone want to try? Anyone? Everyone? Did I lose everybody tonight? Okay, here. It's because I'm a grandpa now, I get it. Okay. A person who desires to ensure that their giving exceeds taking is concerned with benefiting only from their own labor. Fearing that they might not achieve this goal, they choose to avoid earning a living solely through intellectual or professional talents, where the risk of receiving more than they give in service is higher. Instead, they prefer to work with their hands, engaging in single labor paid at the lowest scale, as this guarantees that the value of their effort will certainly be greater than the payment they receive. Okay? They're always careful about what they're taking from the world around them. And therefore, they'll be very happy being a plumber. You think you have to go to college to make a lot of money. Spoiler alert, the plumbers and electricians are making way more money than you are. Okay? They're making way more money than you are. The guy who went into business, who did not go into college and he was become a professional, instead you're working for a company versus a guy working for himself, maybe doing way better than you. You might have a better 401k plan, but he's killing it right now. Okay? Different people, parnasah comes from different ways. Okay? But I don't want to focus on the parnasah aspect of this. I want to think about this idea that each one of us has a deep, unique desire to give. We have this deep desire to want to give, and I'll prove it to you. Okay? We say shnaim, right? Tovim shnaim and echad. Two is always better than one. Every single person here wants to share what you have with someone else. Right? How many people, I know some couples who unfortunately they couldn't have children. They have this deep desire to have kids. What do? They go and adopt. Where does that desire come from? Or for those singles who decide, whatever it is, I'm not ready to get married, they're going to go out and they're going to get a dog. And you see strollers in the streets here with dogs inside of them. Right? Where does that desire come from to want to give? The desire to give. What is that thing? Right? This is interesting. There's this unselfish desire to want to share with others. And by the way, now you may understand where solitary confinement is such a bad punishment. Right? The way you punish somebody is you put them in this small little box by themselves. Why is that such a severe punishment? Because the nature of a person is to want to be with others. We want to share everything that we have. And therefore the idea of putting them in a solitary confinement, a little box, is a way of punishing them. You take that away from them. You can't share with anybody. So where does this nature, this yearning of giving come from? Right? Where does this whole concept of children wanting to give out? I'm not sure if anyone here has any friends who were in the army, but I have a whole bunch of students When after 9/11 happened, I have a bunch of students that decided they were going to join the Marines. They're going to fight. They want to fight, the Taliban back then, and they decided to join the Marines, and they went to fight in Afghanistan, in Iraq. They were the first ones there. The Marines were the first ones there. They cleared out the whole thing. They were there. So I asked these two different guys that were there. I've asked this question to several other people who were in the army. I said to them, when you're in the battlefield, and there are bombs blowing up all around you, and there are bullets flying over your head, what are you thinking about? So they all gave me two answers. Okay, I'm assuming women would think the same way. Okay, they said that number one, if there's a God, please save me. Right, and number two is I can't believe I've not left a legacy behind. Can't believe I don't have children. Right, which means that our core, our base nature is that number one is we hope there's something bigger out there. We want to connect with something bigger, more. And number two is that we all have the desire to leave something over. We want to leave a part of ourselves over here. We want to give to something else. We want to perpetuate what we have. We want to continue this thing called humanity. We want to give over of ourselves to some other generations, people that we don't know. Now, well, where does that desire come from to love our children? Is it an innate thing that the child's born and then you automatically love them? Right? I could tell you that holding my granddaughter was a surreal moment. It's very powerful. I want to be the best grandpa I can be. Right? Obviously, I love her, right? But I don't love her the same way I love my children right now, right? It's different. There's a famous story of a parents who had a child during the Holocaust, and the parents were separated from the kid. The mother was separated from the child, the father was with the kid, and it took them about 8 or 9 years to find their mother, but everyone survived. And the mother did not have the same emotional attachment to her son as the father did. The father spent those last 7, 8 years with the kid, giving, providing, sheltering, caring for, and so on and so forth. And therefore, there's a different, unique relationship that he had developed for that kid. And I would even argue that, what comes first? The love for the child or the desire to give? Or does the desire to give, then comes the love? Which way does it go? What is it that generates the love? Is it the power of loving that comes first? And then my desire to give, or is it desire to give that later builds the love? So the Gemara, what's it called? The Pasuk in Dvarim. There's three different ideas here. Okay, number one is that we know that if someone goes ahead and he has built a house, okay, and he's not lived in it, what happens? He's got to go back. He can't go to war. Someone who planted a vineyard and has not eaten from his vineyard, he's got to go ahead and he cannot go to war. Someone who was married and has not taken has not fulfilled the mitzvah of marrying his wife fully. Okay, when it comes time to wartime, he has to go home. Okay, is there a correlation here between the fruit of your labor and love? What do these three things all have in common? I can understand the first two, my house and my vineyard. But what does me having to get married have to do with building a house and a vineyard? That idea we're talking about over here is intimacy, consummating the marriage. If you have not consummated the marriage, you can't go to war. Why? What's the correlation between consummating my marriage and a vineyard and a house that I haven't lived in? Is this too brainy for you guys tonight? Yeah, maybe. Everyone's used to taking. No one wants to give. What's that? Children? What do you mean, children? Was that your answer? What does that mean? You're leaving a legacy. Oh, okay. So you're coming from that thing. So I would say that more than that.
Planting.
That what?
Planting.
Planting?
Planting specifically.
Okay.
Meaning someone who got married but not really consummated, it hasn't really planted the seed, therefore it has no legacy really coming out. Whereas everything else you kind of sowed and you're going to see something from the fruits of your labor after.
Good. So it's that, and it's this idea that ultimately the things that we invest in are the things that we love. The things that we love are the things that we invest in. There's a correlation here between the things that we create, the things that we desire. And therefore, there is a powerful desire in a man wanting to be with a woman, to consummate his marriage, and equal desire to the possessions that he has. There's a correlation here between intimacy and your possessions.
Rabbi, doesn't this all evolve around selfishness? Even your own children, planting a vineyard for yourself.
Yes.
Even kids.
Yes, that's right. There are
You
two.
want to take kids,
There are two kinds. There are two kinds of parents. The parents that are unfortunately think that their whole purpose of their children is to take from their children. And there's another kind of parent who understands the purpose of his relation with his child is just to give to them unselfishly.
No, but even the legacy.
Yes, there are benefits. There are benefits to giving. We could play the game. Well, let's say, how many people here keep Shabbat because it makes sense? Like you want to have family time, you want to have time with your spouse, you want to have time with the community. Versus, I keep Shabbat because Torah says you keep Shabbat. There's a difference. The one says the reason why I'm keeping Shabbat is conditional because of the benefits I receive from the Shabbat. And the other simply says I'm doing it altruistically because I'm told to do it. There are two kinds of parents out there. There's a kind of parent that is in love with their children and they want to give to them in a healthy way. And there's another set of parents that love the idea of having children. And they're taking from their children. There's two kinds of people that are married, by the way. There are two kinds of people in a relationship. There's a kind of couple that's in a relationship where it benefits them to be in that relationship, and each one is taking from the other in that relationship. And on the outside, it looks great. It makes sense. She's benefiting, he's benefiting. Everyone's there, like a merger of two corporate entities. Everyone's happy, right? But I would argue that's not a healthy marriage. Or I would say betterly. I would say that that is not the highest expression of what a marriage can look like. Because if we know that ahava shetelui b'davar, love that is dependent on something, enu ahava is not considered love. And if I need my children to behave in a certain way, and if I don't get that behavior from them, then I don't really love them. I got a phone call today from a young woman who has a brother who's dating a non-Jew. And she's like, Rabbi, what do I do? I said, well, what's your, I asked a whole bunch of questions, but at the end of the whole conversation, I asked her, I said, do you have a relationship with your brother now? She said, no. I said, well, why not? Well, what am I supposed to do? He's marrying a non-Jew. I'm like, well, he's still your brother. Do you love him only when he does the right thing, or are you willing to love him when he does the wrong thing? We say, Yisrael al b'shachata, he's a Jew even if he sins. Where's the love? Why is your love conditional? That's what he's thinking. That's what I'm thinking. Why is it different for you? I'm like, don't bring him to your house with your kids. Don't go to the wedding, but you still got to love him. But we create all kinds of these weird boundaries for ourselves. We have these weird ideas of like we haven't thought through clearly what it is that we are really here for. Because for most of us, at the core, when we don't think through what we're doing, we're really thinking about what we're taking from as opposed to what we're giving to. That's the point that we're trying to make over here. Right? The Gemara over there in Baba Metzia says that when you take an animal, right, who's, let's look at that with me for a minute. We're almost finished over here. Give me a few more minutes and then we'll take questions and we'll call it a night. A pack animal whose load has fallen, the mitzvah is to help the owner reload it. The other is the case of the overloaded animal, where the mitzvah is twofold, to prevent further suffering of the animal and to help the owner load it more effectively. If one is comforted by both cases at the same time, the second one takes precedence, since an additional mitzvah is involved, helping the animal. If one is confronted by two precisely similar cases, but in one instance the owner is a friend and the owner is an enemy, helping the enemy takes precedence since there's a specific mitzvah to help one's enemy. Two different cases that are very similar. One little thing in that case changed the whole entire outcome, because there is something there that says, I don't want to be here. I don't want to give to this person. No, that's exactly the case where you got to be. You have to conquer your Yetzer Hara, right? But what if the choice is between unloading the pack animal of a friend and reloading the pack animal of the enemy? Here too, the mitzvah of helping the enemy comes first, even though the mitzvah of preventing suffering of an animal is a Torah commandment. Conquering one's Yetzer, the evil inclination, takes precedence. There's an additional point here. By resisting one's inclination and helping one's enemy, one automatically removes some of the hatred from one's own heart and replaces with the love which comes from giving. Right? This is what a person who understands that this is exactly what Torah wants from us. The Torah is setting up the mitzvot, the halachot, in a way where I could go ahead and turn myself into an ultimate giver. Every single mitzvah, everything that we do is all about you becoming a giver, not just taking. But it's so easy living in a Western world, especially today in 2024, where all we think about and concentrate is what can I take from? And I'm not saying that you don't need that urge. And I'm going to next week, God willing, I'm going to double click on that and I'll explain to you what that urge is. And I'm going to try to kind of clarify a little bit more for you because we're in the middle of a conversation. It's very unsatisfying. I apologize to you. But this is a long conversation. I first want you to get this idea. The idea that I want you to walk away with tonight is like this. I understand that there's this nature of giving and taking. I understand that there's a need for me to go ahead and support and for me to go ahead and make money. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. I'm not saying you should live like the Chavetz Chaim. I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is that where do we draw the line between us being givers and takers? Are we thinking deeply enough about what it truly means to be a godly, inspired person? Someone who's thinking about not what he's taking from, but what he's giving to. That's all I'm saying, because I have a suspicion that if I was to poll this whole entire group over here, okay, I suspect that 90% of this group is more focused on what they're taking from the world that they're living in versus what they're giving back to. And that means that you are not expressing the highest parts of who you are. That means that we have not created an environment, a community of people who are living the truest expression of their essence and their being. That's what I'm getting at. And of course, you should have all those things, all the good things, the luxuries that life has to offer. But you have to ask yourself, at what cost? Because we know at the end of the day, Ratzah Mea, Yeshua Mea, Ratzah Matayim, he wants 400. There's a nature of being unsatisfied. And God willing, next week we're going to talk about what it means to be satisfied. What does it mean to actually pursue things? Is a survival of the fittest the best system? What does that system look like? And how do we create a world that is a better world for you and I to live in? Because if you leave things status quo, you're setting yourself for one thing. It's called unhappiness. If the whole purpose of life, if the life you're leading on a subconscious level is only about what you're taking from, no, you will not find happiness. You cannot get happiness from material things. You can be satiated, you can be distracted, but true happiness does not come from material things. And again, I'm not saying you shouldn't have it. Have it. I have a nice house, I drive a nice car, I like certain things that are fine things in the world. Enjoy those things. But you have to ask yourself, what is motivating? If the sole motivation is for you to take from, you're setting yourself up for a life of misery. If you want to live a life of true greater happiness, what I would say a life of love, understand that you have to make a shift in your own mind about thinking about how you can give to and not just take from. Bezrat Hashem, we will pick up this conversation next week. Thank you so much for listening, and have an amazing week. Questions, comments?